The video shows one person getting out of a car with his hands up. Minutes later, audio from a second dash camera reveals the situation is not what it appears.
Tornadoes wreaking havoc yet again across the plains.
Large tornado north of Verdon, Oklahoma.
Residents in the heartland.
I got trees coming down on me and power flashes. I got to back out of here.
Waking up to disaster. For the first time in history, the National Weather Service declaring a flash flood emergency in Oklahoma City. The massive storm causing up to 8 inches of rainfall in a matter of hours.
The high surf attracting plenty of surfers to our beaches behind me. You can see from Sky 10 there, this guy hanging 10. This is in Carlsbad this morning. Let's turn to 10 News reporter Jared Aarons now, who's live in Oceanside with the big waves. How's it looking behind you?
Well, Jason, it may look like surf's up in Carlsbad, but down here in Oceanside, the word of the day is caution, and you can see why. Those big waves crashing through the pier. High tide hit just about a half hour ago. A lifeguard described the conditions to me as treacherous. A surfer told me the waves were so strong he was having trouble paddling out.
I don't think my boat's going out today.
As part of his retirement, Joe Palmiotti goes boating with friends every Monday morning at the Oceanside Harbor. Not today.
And as I was coming around to check the waves out, I happened to notice that there's a red flag up over there, meaning there's small craft warnings.
Waves crashed over the jetty, keeping Joe's boat at bay. Down by the pier, only a handful of the bravest and most skilled surfers battled the waves Monday morning in Oceanside.
It's actually pretty walled and bumpy, but it's good to have some size for a change, especially this time of year. It's springtime and it's usually small and windy, but now it's kind of big and windy.
The National Weather Service has a high surf advisory in effect until Tuesday night, with 6 to 10 foot swells and strong rip currents expected. It's the same system that forced this Carnival cruise ship to dock in San Diego rather than face waves as high as 20 feet in LA.
And we understand this is not something that the company can control. This is out of their control.
Because of these dangerous conditions, there are extra lifeguards on staff here in Oceanside. They say this morning's cooler weather helped them because it kept lots of people off the beach, but they're getting ready for whatever the afternoon brings.
More mysteries now. New at 7, a mystery off of our coast has puzzled scientists for months, but now they have some idea what caused huge schools of anchovies to swim right up to La Jolla shores last July.
Well, the reason for it is called the blob. 10 News anchor Robert Santos found out that it could eventually have a big impact on San Diego's weather.
Just off La Jolla shores last July, we witnessed this incredible sight of millions of anchovies, a wall of fish as wide as a football field.
It was so thick you couldn't even see the sand below it.
Then in Oceanside in November, harbor police spotted this pod of about 12 to 15 killer whales just off the coast.
Something pretty spectacular most people don't ever get to see.
One possible explanation for these unusual sightings, an area in the northern Pacific nicknamed the Blob by a University of Washington scientist. The Blob is a body of water that has been 5 to 6 degrees warmer than normal since the fall of 2013. Since then, another blob has appeared in the Bering Sea, and yet a third blob right off the coast of California down to Baja California. Scientists from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are here discussing the blob at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego.
Last summer, part of the reduction in the June gloom was likely due to the state of the upper ocean being warmer than normal.
Scientists believe a strong ridge of high pressure over the west for 2 winters caused that blob. The ridge drove cold storms into the Midwest and East Coast, keeping much of the West sunny and dry and warming up the Pacific.
Does this blob mean that we're going to change back to the warmer condition, which would mean more rainfall? We're still asking that question.
Scientists admit the answer isn't clear, but they do know if the blob persists for a third year, they'll know something unusual is going on. Robert Santos, 10 News.
Wow, and they will be watching it. Scientists spent the day focusing on what the blob is, and tomorrow they'll focus more on the why, trying to determine its cause.
Welcome to Newsline. I'm Minoru Takao in Tokyo. First, the headlines at this hour. Seismic activity has been increasing at Mount Hakone in a popular hot spring area. The Meteorological Agency has raised the alert level and is advising people to keep their distance from the crater. Hakone is a popular destination for tourists from Japan and overseas, but seismic activity has been increasing. Officials have raised the warning level for the volcano, and that is hitting local businesses hard. NHK World's Keiko Yamamoto has more.
Officials at the Meteorological Agency say they've recorded many earthquakes near the surface of the mountain in the past 2 weeks.
The pressure of humidoric gas from underneath has become slightly stronger.
The officials have raised the alert level for the volcano from 1 to 2. A level 2 warning says people shouldn't approach the crater.
Based on the level of seismic activity and the movement of the crust, we don't expect a major eruption. I don't believe local hot spring facilities will be affected.
Officials say a minor eruption could take place in the mountain's Owakudani Valley. Authorities banned entry to hiking trails within 3 kilometers of the valley. That came at a bad time for people who wanted to spend their spring holidays in the area. A ropeway leading to the valley is out of service.
Today we wanted to go in the top of the mountain to see the Fujisan. We are a little bit disappointed.
Local businesses are feeling the effects. This shop owner says the number of people visiting his store this past weekend was down about 70%.
This is causing us a lot of trouble. We can't do anything without visitors.
Local authorities are trying to minimize the impact on tourism. They stress that the size of the no-go area is limited. Workers have checked hotels and inns in the Owakudani area to make sure they are safe.
374 and slow them down.
It was a tense scene in upstate New York last April as Ramapo police can be seen on dashcam video approaching a car filled with 4 passengers wearing bulletproof vests. Guns drawn, all signs pointed to a serious situation.
All other units with caution. All other units with caution.
The video shows one person getting out of a car with his hands up. Minutes later, audio from a second dash camera reveals the situation is not what it appears.
Hey, all units that are not at that location, you can disregard.
The car's occupants are 4 New York State parole officers out executing a search warrant. Those officers say they were stopped because they are African American.
There's no doubt if I was Caucasian that I would not be standing here.
All 4 officers say they immediately identified themselves to Ramapo police, were wearing their shields, and offered to show identification.
No matter what we did to show or verify that we were, the aggressive treatment continued.
I was violently pulled out of the vehicle, and I was slammed against the vehicle.
The parole officers filed a civil suit against the Ramapo Police Department and the city, alleging their civil rights were violated.
They were assaulted and battered at gunpoint. Mario Alexandre was dragged out of his government vehicle.
Despite the allegations, the dashcam video made public by police does not appear to show parole officer Mario Alexander being slammed against a vehicle.
Now, at what point were you assaulted or battered?
Well, assault in the civil context of the law is being threatened with force. That's an assault.
Ramapo police say they made the stop because they were responding to this 911 call.
And I saw just a plain Chevy Malibu, is that what it was? An Impala car with 4 big people get out of it, and I thought they had bulletproof vests and shields on.
The 911 caller did not identify any of you by race.
We can only go at the moment from the tape that was released by the people that we are suing.
Ramapo police referred CNN to the city's attorney, who says the actions of the police officers involved were reasonable under the circumstances. There was a 911 call indicating suspicious activity. The attorney also says the parole officers had not notified the police they would be in town, a common courtesy, and were allowed on their way promptly after they were identified. Neither the parole officers nor their attorney would say how long they were held, but they were clear on how they felt they were treated. And Aaron, the attorney representing the parole officers, says that they will not indicate how much that they are suing the police for, but they say at the very least these officers should be disciplined for what happened that day. Aaron?
In the past 24 hours, as a result of military actions and clashes, we have lost 5 of our soldiers and 12 others were injured.
The deaths came ahead of a meeting on Wednesday in Minsk to discuss the crisis in Ukraine. In spite of the ceasefire, casualties are reported almost daily in the country's restive east in a 1-year-old conflict that has left over 6,000 people dead.
The Central African Republic says it will take legal action against French troops involved in alleged child sex abuse at a refugee camp. The Justice Minister says soldiers accused of having sex with children in exchange for food will be pursued. The minister said his country should have been involved in UN and French probes into these allegations. Several children allege that over a dozen French soldiers sexually abused some of them in exchange for food. The soldiers were sent to the CAR as part of a peacekeeping mission. France was alerted by the UN about the allegations in July 2014. Well, to discuss that a bit further, I'm joined by Mr. Douglas DeGroot, who is an African policy analyst who is joining us live now via Skype from Leesburg. Sir, thanks very much for joining us here on Press TV. How do you feel about these allegations, firstly, and any possibility of the Central African Republic actually seeing accountability in this case?
Well, as for accountability, I'll leave that answer second. It could very well be true. The deteriorating cultural situation in France as well as the Western world makes this possible. Apparently the UN actually leveled the charges. It would not be difficult to believe. The more serious part of the problem actually is how the situation deteriorated so much that it came to this point. And there you can really pin the blame on the French. They did not intervene first. They let it deteriorate into a free-for-all. And prior to that, the previous president there, Bozize, had tried to get the French to develop some of the oil deposits there, and the French would not. Possibly sources from Central Africa think because the same pool of oil goes under part of Chad, and Chad's oil share will run out in about 15 years, so they don't want anybody else dipping into that. So then they went to the Chinese, and they agreed to do it. And that's when the coup against him took place after that.
I also wanted to talk, Mr. DeGroot, about the UN's role. I do apologize for interrupting you. I also want to talk about the UN's role and ask, the person who brought this to the fore, to the French government, was suspended, in fact, was a UN worker. Why is that, do you think? Why is the UN so sensitive to such information getting out?
That is a more difficult question. They are, I suppose, they think they're somewhat dependent on French role there. Once it's been allowed to deteriorate so much. That's my speculation. I don't know. Otherwise, you'd think if the French were trying to give themselves a better image in Africa, they would say they would go after such a problem and deal with it. They wouldn't force a fellow reporting, blowing the whistle, to be thrown out. It looks very bad for the French.
Indeed. Well, we'll leave it there at that, but as always, Mr. DeGroot, we do sincerely appreciate your insight. That was Mr. Douglas DeGroot, who is speaking to us live by Skype.
Dozens of homes are destroyed after dangerous tornadoes touched down in the southern plains. Multiple twisters slammed several states late yesterday. More than a dozen people were hurt. The storms also brought heavy downpours to some areas. Many communities dealt with flash floods on top of the tornado destruction.
Thousands are without power this morning, and many are assessing the damage after the tornadoes turned their homes into piles of rubble. More severe weather threatens the same areas today. Adriana Diaz is in Oklahoma City outside a motel heavily damaged by the storms. Adriana, good morning.
Good morning. This hotel in southern Oklahoma City tried to prepare. They boarded up their windows, but stood little chance against the tornado that tore right through here.
Holy cow.
Tornadoes tore across the Midwest.
Here we go.
Sirens filled the air as they kicked up pieces of debris, some of them narrowly missing these cars. The Roadrunner RV park in southern Oklahoma City was hit hard. The storm overturned trailers and ripped them apart. At least 5 people there were critically injured. The damage in Grady County scattered for miles. Some buildings were seriously damaged, others completely destroyed. This pile of splintered wood and metal is where the Bridge Creek Fire Department once stood. Overnight, police used flashlights to get a close look at the destruction. Lance Bergman rode out the tornado in his Lincoln County, Kansas home.
We got down in the basement. It actually flung the basement doors open and threw some tree debris and stuff down in the basement.
This is a very impressive wall cloud. It is
the thick clouds darkened the sky and brought heavy rain.
We have been hit hard today, and it's not over. It's not over.
Cars made their way through window-high floodwaters near Oklahoma City, where this pair helped each other to safety. One driver had to be cut out of his silver pickup after crashing in the dangerous conditions. The terminal at Oklahoma City's airport was evacuated twice. Hundreds took shelter in a pedestrian tunnel where they waited for the storm to pass. All public schools here in Oklahoma City are closed today. Flash flood warnings remain in effect for parts of Oklahoma, Texas, and Nebraska. And more severe weather could be on the way through the weekend.
Okay, we have debris launching into the sky. Mike, we have a roof that just flew through the air here. I don't know where it came from. Tornadoes wreaking havoc yet again across the plains.
Large tornado north of Verdon, Oklahoma.
Residents in the heartland.
I got trees coming down on me and power flashes. I got to back out of here.
Waking up to disaster as the Red Cross and emergency personnel begin combing through the neighborhoods damaged or destroyed in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska.
I saw two clouds meet as one, and then we could hear the sound of a train. Our ears started popping because of the air pressure.
For the first time in history, the National Weather Service declaring a flash flood emergency in Oklahoma City. The massive storm causing up to 8 inches of rainfall in a matter of hours. The main airport in Oklahoma City shut down as employees and passengers evacuate through a pedestrian tunnel. You need to take shelter immediately. This is a large tornado which is continuing to grow in size. South of Oklahoma City, the hardest hit. Lightning flashing through a wall of clouds as tornadoes rip roofs off buildings, including the side of this hotel.
I'm in the middle of tornado damage right now.
At least 3 residents in critical condition after a tornado flattened a mobile home park.
I've got power flashes in front of me.
The tornado emergency, including the city of Moore. The entire screen is a tornado, folks. Where just 2 years ago, a massive EF5 tornado killed dozens of people and demolished over 1,000 homes.
The U.S. Appeals Court has ruled that the NSA's massive collection of phone records is illegal. The ruling determines that it exceeds the scope of what Congress authorized. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, to help explain this for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Carol. That's right. This is the program that essentially allows the NSA to sweep up all of this data from people's phone calls, not the content of those phone calls, but when calls are made, who those calls are made to. The NSA has been collecting this data for years, and the program was exposed by the NSA leaker Edward Snowden. Well, a court of appeals up in New York looked at this program and found it to be illegal, that it exceeds the scope of the Patriot Act. And there's a pretty damning section of this ruling from the Court of Appeals up in New York saying that it exceeds the scope of what Congress has authorized. Now, this court ruling did not say whether or not the program was constitutional, but it did basically find it to be illegal. Carol, we should point out, though, that not only does the White House sort of agree with all of this, but members of Congress agree with this, and they're trying to reform the NSA's collection of this bulk metadata, as it's called. There's a bill proceeding up on Capitol Hill at this point that the White House would like to see signed into law. So all of this is moving forward. It appears on a legislative front, but the court has weighed in, and for all of those folks out there who are upset with Edward Snowden and all of his exposures of what's happening at the NSA, this is one particular program that he exposed that a federal court found to be illegal.